Have you ever had a dream so big, but instead of an applause, you got betrayal? Instead of progress, you faced prison? Well, welcome to Joseph's story. A story about dreams, pain, patience, and how God can turn every pit into a palace. Joseph was just a teenager when he had a dream. In his dream, he saw himself in a position of greatness, standing tall while others bowed to him. He shared his dream with his brothers, but instead of support, they hated him. You can see that in Genesis 37 verse 5, where Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. Not everyone will celebrate your dream. Sometimes the people closest to you will be the ones who hurt you the most. One day, his brothers decided they had enough. They threw Joseph into a dry pit and left him there to die. You can see that in Genesis 37 verse 24, where they took him and threw him into a cistern. The cistern was empty, there was no water in it. But instead of killing him, they sold him to a passing merchant for 20 pieces of silver. You can see that in Genesis 37 verse 28. The lesson there is betrayal hurts, but sometimes betrayal is what moves you towards your destiny. Joseph found himself in Egypt, a foreign land, a slave with no rights. Yet, even in slavery, Joseph worked hard, served faithfully, and gained favor. You can see in Genesis 39 verse 2, it says the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. The lesson there is your surrounding don't define your success. Your faithfulness does. But just when things were looking up, Joseph was falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit. He was thrown into prison, forgotten once again. You can see in Genesis 39 verse 20 where it says, Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. The lesson there is sometimes life gets worse before it gets better, but that doesn't mean God has abandoned you. In prison, Joseph still helped others, interpreting dreams for fellow prisoners. But even those he helped forgot about him for years. You can see that in Genesis 40:23, where the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Being overlooked by man, as another lesson, doesn't mean you're overlooked by God. God's timing is never wrong. One night, Pharaoh had troubling dreams. No one could interpret them until Joseph was remembered. You can see that in Genesis 41 verse 14. Joseph interpreted the dream and within one day went from prisoner to prime minister. Wow. You can see in Genesis 41:41, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. One day, God's favor can undo years of pain. Stay ready because your moment is coming. Later, Joseph's brother came to Egypt desperate for food. They didn't recognize Joseph. The boy they sold into slavery was now the ruler standing before them. Joseph had the power to punish them, but instead he forgave. You can see that in Genesis 50 verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Another lesson there is true greatness isn't in revenge, it's in forgiveness. When you heal, you rise. Joseph's story is proof that the pit is not the end. The betrayal cannot cancel destiny. That no prison can lock away God's promises. That every delay is preparation for a great future and a greater future. So if you are in a pit right now, if you feel forgotten, broken, or betrayed, remember Joseph. Your palace is still coming. If Joseph's story touched you, hit like, leave a comment on your favorite part, share the video with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to What the Bible Taught Me for more real life Bible stories that change lives today. Have a wonderful day.